or we'll have an opportunity to answer questions at the end and unmute ourselves. Also, I do want to let everyone know that we are sharing live on Facebook, and we are recording so we can make sure we capture all the goodness of homecoming weekend, even though it's a little bit different than what we normally are used to, seeing each other in person. We've been having some really great conversations across campus and on Zoom, hearing from Dr. Nelson, getting an update of what's happening, what's happening on campus and what the future looks like. This is a really interesting time in higher education to be a college student. We have alumni, faculty, staff, and parents joining us right now. So we're excited for the opportunity to be able to reach more folks virtually, but still missing the opportunity to be close and in person. So Dr. Nelson, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mindy. Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to be able to join together like this. I know we're all a little weary of saying that we wish we could be in person, but I really wish we could be in person. I really mean that. And I see some faces that are becoming familiar to me in these little boxes, and I see some names and faces of people I haven't yet met. So thank you for joining us, and let's just say that we'll look forward to the time in the future where we can do this kind of thing once again in the same space, person to person. So thanks for joining us. We were determined to do homecoming, even though we're having to do it differently. So we're doing a series of events like this. I will let you know we're doing some things on campus that are certainly different, but they're important. Like I know we're doing a homecoming court, and we're going to have a small dinner for those who were elected later in the week. So we're doing whatever things we can like that to have some sense of community. But while we'd rather it be in person, I'm glad that since we can't be, we have the opportunity to be together virtually. So in the moments I have, I'm going to share with you some data that I think you will be interested in, give you a sense of things on campus as they currently are, celebrate a few community accomplishments, give you some idea of what I've been up to and am up to, and as well, just to make a few remarks about how I'm looking at the future of your alma mater. So I'll cover those 4 or 5 areas fairly briefly, and then see what questions you have, and I'm happy to try to answer whatever questions you have. So let me start off by just giving you the state of things with a few data points that I think are significant. We continue to have students that are about 40% Pell eligible. A third of our students or more are first generation students, around 40% students who are people of color. A majority of our students come from North Carolina and the local counties, but represented by some 34 states and 19 nations beyond the United States. So it's really a diverse campus, which is a wonderful thing about Catawba. You'll be glad to know that Catawba landed once again in the top 10 in the US News and World Report rankings of small colleges in the South. We were number 7 this year. I think that's 5 years running that Catawba has been in the top 10. Also, I'm very proud to say that we were once again listed in Princeton's review of top colleges in the United States. So they choose the 386 best every year, and your alma mater is one of them. And that's really something to be proud of. Just recently, we received other news that we were named a top 50 green college by Princeton. And so that's a really great accomplishment as well, since Catawba has for many years been head of the pack on those issues. And then each year we do a survey of what's happening with our graduating classes to see the rate of employment, how many people are in graduate school, And I'm glad to report that the data on the class of 2019 continues to return strong results. 98.5% of the class of 2019 are either employed right now or in graduate school. Those are really, really good numbers that speak well of our students and the education that they receive here. Let me give you a sense of things on campus. I know the question everyone is asking is what's happening with COVID on campus. And I'm glad to say that we're doing, I believe, better than any of us expected we would do. That doesn't mean we have not had our challenges. We have had our challenges. And in July, we announced a return to Catawba plan that was led by a return to campus plan and a return to work group, 2 working groups who've now sort of joined together to help us think about how to return to campus and how to stay on campus. And I think the group is now calling itself the Remain on Campus group. And that's very much what we're focused on. I know the numbers you're kind of interested in. We've had to date 21 student positive cases and 3 employee cases throughout the semester. If you average that out, since we brought people back to campus, that's about 1.5 cases per week on average. We shortened the semester, we altered the calendar. So we started a day early. We will end with on-campus courses the day before Thanksgiving, and students will go home for Thanksgiving and not return. Their finals will be online. We didn't think it wise to send everyone around the country and then bring them back to campus for 2 weeks. So instead, we're just sending everyone home. That's the way we planned it. And then we won't come back until January 25th. So we compressed the semester. So we have an earlier end date, but no break in the middle, no fall break, and we will not do a spring break in the spring. Instead, we'll start January 25th and end on May 17th, I believe. So that helps us because we're getting around the concerns of a cold and flu season in the winter that could make the COVID dangers worse. And so we're following the advice of scientists and epidemiologists on this. I will say it makes for a challenge without any breaks built into the semester, but we're weathering that pretty well, I think. Another way of looking at the COVID news is in our return to Catawba plan, we have an exit strategy. So we looked at all the data that we would have to think through on a daily and weekly basis about the well-being of campus with respect to the coronavirus. And we have a 4-tiered system: green, yellow, orange, and red. Green means we're doing the best that we think we can, and our quarantine beds are not anywhere near filled, and we are able to carry on campus operations. Yellow means we're worried about our capacity for quarantine space, and we have some real pressures on campus operations. Orange means we're not able to carry on all campus operations, and we're stressed on quarantine space. And at that point, we would have gone 2 weeks all remote at that point. Red means it's not working and we have to send everyone home and go back to essential employees again. We have remained green every week of the semester. I'll tell you, we've had a couple of weeks where we worked through whether or not we should go yellow, but fortunately we laid out our criteria ahead of time, and we were able to just answer our own sets of questions while consulting with public health officials, which, by the way, we do on a weekly basis, sometimes more often than that. And so we have remained green throughout the entire semester. That is a tribute not just to good planning, but it's a tribute to the Catawba community. Faculty, staff who have worked hard, and I just have to commend students who followed protocols, who've taken this seriously, who've done what we asked of them. Has that been perfect? No, it hasn't been perfect. You know, we've had to take care of some issues. I've had to deliver a couple of stern messages. We've had to talk to people one-on-one, as you would imagine. But I just, by and large, you should be very proud of the campus community. The fact that we have done as well as we have done is because everyone has worked together. We said this from the beginning, we'll get through it together because we're in this together, and that has been the case. And I see the heads nodding of people who are working on campus. It's just been an all-out effort by everybody on the campus. We're not done. We're not done. We still have a few weeks to go, and we are determined to get there. So I think another way of looking at this is that there's a great deal of excitement about being on campus. Students were really, really glad to be back to learn in person. At the same time, there's a great deal of weariness because this is exhausting. You know, going to college is exhausting enough, and then there's no breaks. And then on top of it, you have the anxieties and stresses of a pandemic. And people are tired. You can see it. And we've tried to do some things throughout the semester to relieve that, but people are weary. And that's just the state of affairs. Along with that, though, there's a real sense of healthy pride and determination to work together to get through all of this together. And I, again, just want to say how proud I am of the community. Let me tell you how we've run classes. A third of them are in person, just like you would ordinarily see. You can imagine a lot of lab courses and those sorts of things are done in person. We have about a third that are hybrid, so they'll meet one day a week and have online for the rest of the time. And then we have about a third that are all online. And that was partly to accommodate some faculty who have some health concerns who needed to be online, and some of our student population likewise. And so many students are simply taking a combination of those, but I can tell you students have been very glad for the in-person experience. And that includes things like you would see a choir rehearsal held in the chapel, everyone spaced out and singing with masks on. That happens. And you'll see theater productions where they're doing radio shows, for example. Athletics, we postponed the fall season. We're going to attempt to do partial seasons in the spring, but we finally got to the point where we could do workouts and then practices. Football even did a spring game in the middle of the fall, a blue and white game. Blue won 13-7, by the way. And we allowed some parents to come see that. So we're doing those things that we can. And we're going to try basketball in the winter season in kind of a bubble, since no one will be on campus. They'll have a game starting November 21st, the men's and women's teams, and we'll see how that goes. And then the idea is for a half season for fall sports in the spring. So like 4 football games, for example, plus a championship. And then the spring sports will play about an 75 to 80% schedule. So lots of challenges there, but we know better how to do this in the future. So performing arts, athletic, student activities are going on. They're different than they ordinarily would be, but things are happening. Enrollment is a bit down, which we expected it would be. We came in just a little below the number that we thought we would have for the fall, off by a couple of percent. That was the residential numbers were offset, though, by a bit of growth in our online non-traditional programs, which is not a surprise. And we opened 3 new graduate programs during the summer. Our goal was to have 30 students enrolled. We had 31 enrolled. Those are going really, really well. An MBA and sports management and a clinical counseling master's degree. And we are recruiting actively for new cohorts in those programs next year. And I can tell you there's a great deal of interest in those programs. So we're doing fine on our budget. We passed a three scenario budget, a best case, a worst case, and a kind of middle case. We're right in the middle where we thought we would be, and we're watching that carefully. But I've had a lot of questions about enrollment and finances, and we are holding our own. So we're going to get through this, I think, pretty much in the way that we had expected. That doesn't mean it's easy, but but we are going to get through that. Let me tell you about some community accomplishments, because here we are, college is going on. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the midst of a national election. There are all kinds of anxieties and tensions and all of that. And in the middle of that, you might lose just sight of some really good things that are happening. They might get kind of clouded, if you will. So here are just a couple of bragging points that you should know about. The Ncicu Undergraduate Research Awards, that's the North Carolina Independent Colleges and Universities, an association of all of the private schools in the state. They have an undergraduate research competition each year. They give 12 awards, and this year Catawba students won 5 of the 12 awards. To give you a sense of that, I think there were 2 schools that had multiple awards. There's a little school up in Durham called Duke that got 5, and then Catawba got 5, and then some others that filled in after that. So pretty impressive, and you should be proud of your students who participated in that competition. Professor Laura Powell, who's in the business school, and she's think computer science, also an alumna of Catawba who has come back to teach. She and 2 peers co-authored a paper for the 25th International Symposium on Methodologies for Intelligent Systems. That's a mouthful, but Lauren and her colleagues presented a paper. They won the Best Paper Award in an international symposium, so we're proud of our alumna and new professor for that recognition. In case you have missed it, Professor Michael Bitzer has been ubiquitous in the news, not only in the country, but actually around the world, commenting on electoral politics in North Carolina. He is much sought after. And boy, what a fount of wisdom. He's ubiquitous. You know, all kinds of people are ubiquitous during this election cycle, but not everyone is always worth listening to. But Michael Bitzer is worth listening to. So you can rely on him for remarkably intelligent, insightful, thoughtful analysis. And really, he's performing a great service to our state and to our nation by doing this work. So if you haven't seen him, you can look up Michael Bitzer and his blog post and see him and his colleagues giving really important information about North Carolina electoral politics. I guess the other thing I'll mention among community accomplishments is our Day of Giving that Mindy and with Savannah and others put on for us. I think last year you had a bit over 300 givers, about almost $80,000. A goal this year of 350 givers. The emphasis is on the number of givers more so than the money. And this year over 800 people gave over $200,000. And that just brava to Mindy and the whole team there. And I have to say, it's wonderful to see that kind of support. Really wonderful that so many students participated, including the class of 2024. I think they were the #1 among the students. So our current incoming first-year class had more givers than any other class. And certainly a number of alums came, but we were just thrilled that our first-year students got involved in this. We had a healthy competition among some sports teams, parents. I think 15% of the givers were parents of our students, which is just wonderful. So really cultivating a sense of community. And I can tell you that that Day of Giving was a real morale boost, not just for our employees, but for our students. They noticed the fact that people were supporting them. And so we had some celebration last week for this with some food trucks at lunch, and it was really a great event in the community. So thanks to everyone who was so supportive. A couple of other things I'll comment on. Partially what I'm up to. It's a sort of an odd situation. You come into this position and ordinarily I would have met many of you, or I would have met you this week when you were on campus, and we're not able to do so. So I'm getting a lot of questions about how we're doing and how we're acclimating. So I'll make a few comments about that. Kimberly, my wife, and I are thrilled to be at Catawba. We're very grateful to be back in North Carolina, which is home to us. Kimberly is a native of Trinity, just up the highway, just on the south side of High Point. And all of her family is there. The kids Our kids are here in the state of, well, two of them are in North Carolina, one of them is in Texas, and there are two grandkids in Raleigh. So there's lots of family around for us, and we're very glad to be back near family. We're especially grateful to be at Catawba. And for us, the sense of mission and values at Catawba were really, really important to us. This for us is a sense of calling to come here in this role. And I have to say, people ask, you know, what really drew you to Catawba? And the answer to that is the people. Because lots of institutions state a mission and they state their values. But at Catawba, that is living and breathing amidst the people who are the Catawba family. And that language, Catawba family, was used a lot in the interview process. And what we've discovered is that's a real thing. That's not a talking point, that's a real thing. And you know that because you are a part of the family. And we're learning that because we've become a part of the family. So we're really thrilled to be here. We come with a sense of calling and are honored and privileged to have the stewardship of people in place that is Catawba College. So we are, you know, in the midst of guiding a college through a pandemic while also carefully thinking about the future. We're doing meetings like this. I'm doing a series of meetings called Table Talk that is where I'm hosting virtually students, faculty, employees, and alums to spend an hour with me each in a setting like this, no more than 12 people, to answer 3 questions. What do you love about Catawba? What one thing would you change if you could? And what bit of advice do you have for a president? Those have been really wonderful sessions. We've had a number of them. When I'm done doing that this semester, I'll actually write up a report of what I'm seeing and hearing, and then I'll do some Zoom meetings like this to let people know what I'm observing, any further questions I have, as well as making some proposals about the future. So you can look for that. And if you'd like to participate in a table talk, you can of course contact Mindy and she'll be happy to get you engaged in one of those. The last thing I'll comment on is what we're thinking about in Catawba's future. I, along with the cabinet, board of trustees, other campus leaders, are looking at what to do over the next 3 years. We're laying out some strategic priorities for that timeline. That work is mission driven and data informed. It is heavily focused on enacting the mission and values of Catawba College. It involves a look at our academic programs, how we're recruiting, how we're branding and marketing the institution, how we will continue to fundraise to support the institution, and how we will budget so that we have a sustainable financial and organizational capacity for the future of the college. I would then imagine that by about 2022, we'll do a more full-blown strategic planning process with a 10-year horizon and a really solid 5-year plan. But right now we're focusing on the next 3 years, which also means getting us through the challenges of the pandemic. I should note on fundraising, we're in the midst of doing some revisions to our Mind, Body, Soul campaign. You'll hear more about that in the future, especially the mind portion of it, to ensure that we have the resources we need for our academic programs. But that also includes the soul portion, kind of spiritual life of the campus, which is so important, as well as body, athletics. And along those lines, I should note some accomplishments. If you return, when students and faculty return to the campus in August, the Kettner building was open again for the first time in a couple of years. I talked to juniors on campus who had never been inside that building. It is now open and in use again. And the bottom floor, by the way, has wonderful new space for exercise science and our nursing programs. Those in those programs are thrilled to have that new space. As well, the Shuford Science Building is in the midst of a renovation, all new laboratories. Much of that is completed, though the whole process probably won't be finally done till the summer. And then if you go into Shuford Stadium, you'll see a brand new turf. What will be named the Alcorn Family Turf is there, artificial turf with Georgia white pine infill, no plastic. The infill is wood. And I can tell you that when we had about 4 inches of rain in 45 minutes back in September, I was on that field 30 minutes later and you could have played a game on it. It drains wonderfully. And with that, we're beginning to now look at a redo of Newman Park, our baseball field. That's a great old ballpark, historic ballpark. It is in need of some love. And so we are busy raising funds for that. We hope to start on phase 1. I should say, Meg, we will start on phase 1 in summer of 21. As soon as the baseball season's over, we'll redo the turf in that stadium, move home plate back, do some other improvements, and then in a phase 2, continue to just build a superb complex for our baseball players at Catawba, as well as the American Legion folks here in Salisbury, Rowan community, and other things as well. So there's some new looks on campus. The place looks beautiful. And most of all, it looks great just because there's students here engaged in learning. So it's been, to be sure, a very challenging semester. It remains so, but there are lots of good things happening on campus. And as tired as everyone is from doing this, I still think there's a sense of gratitude that we could be in person, appreciation for one another, for everyone taking care of one another, and a kind of joy that we're getting through this together. So I will leave it at that and see what questions you have. You can either drop those in the chat or unmute and pose whatever questions you will.
So feel free to unmute, and we will be sharing any questions we get on Facebook Live as well.
And I should note, Mindy they've put all kinds of information. I've referred to several things, and they've dropped links to some of that information in the chat. If you go down to the bottom of your screen and click on that, you'll see that information. What questions do you have?
President Nelson, I think many of us love the lessons and carols that are put on every year. I was wondering what the plans are for this year. It's really a shame that you've not been able to hear the choral department in its in its natural setting rather than singing through masks, because they do a marvelous job every year. And what are the plans for lessons and carols?
Steve, thank you for asking. I should have mentioned that already. We're doing a virtual lessons and carols. And so you will see that coming up after Thanksgiving. You'll be able to log on and see it. And this is kind of exciting. Back in September, folks in the music department and I began discussing this. We knew that we wouldn't be able to do anything in person. That was just very unlikely. And so Philip and others began suggesting that we do a virtual program, which I agreed with completely. And I wish you could have seen the excitement of the students when they immediately moved toward preparing for it. So it will be a little different because it won't be an in-person. One of the advantages to that is we were able to involve more groups of people in it. So you'll see a wider representation of students than I think you've seen. It's already been recorded. We're in the midst of editing it right now. And that will be, you'll see information about it coming up in December. So you'll be able to tune in and see it. And then of course, we'll hope that we'll be able to return to an in-person celebration next year. You are correct that this is something I was really looking forward to. We're looking forward to many things in the Catawba community, and one of them was getting to participate in lessons and carols. So we'll do it virtually this year. So be on the lookout for that. Phil, I see your comment about Dr. Bitzer and him being mentioned so often and so positively. I hear that all the time. And in fact, not long ago, I was talking to a potential funder, And the one thing they knew about Catawba was Dr. Bitzer, and that did not hurt us that that they identified our college with his work. So keep spreading the word about his contribution to our state. What other questions?
I have a question for you, and this is based on a lot of our conversations. So outside of COVID, what are the things that keep you up thinking at night?
Well, there are a number of things that keep me up at night. One is I don't sleep naturally, so I never have. But so when people ask me that question, that may not be because anything's worrying me. I just don't sleep much. But there are things that worry me. And I said this on Friday. We've started a new orientation process for new employees that is really helping to root all of us. And by the way, I participated as a new employee to help us think about the history of the college and its mission and its values and how we operate and all those kinds of things. And someone asked me this question at my table. And I said this because it may be the thing that I worry about the most. And that is, as I think about our mission, our values, the curricula, the programs we offer, as I meet alums and I hear from you how Catawba shaped your life, how it formed you as a person and all those things. When I think about that and I hear the stories of Catawba alums and meet current students and all of that, I worry about the people whose lives could be transformed by Catawba education, but who don't get here. And they may not get here because they don't know about us. They may not get here because we don't tell our story in a compelling way that makes them want to come here. And for some, they don't get here because they can't afford to. I mean, we've begun looking at the data of the number of students who, after the aid we give them, and these are students who have an expected family contribution of 0. That is, the federal government tells us they can't contribute any dollars to their education. And I've looked at a number of them in the data that we get to within $5,000 to $6,000 of getting them here. But that gap in funding means they can't come. They're academically qualified, but they just don't have the means to get here. And I keep worrying about how to get those students here. Some of them are athletes, some of them are artists, some of them are going to be scientists, doctors, some of them are going to be in the health fields, some of them in business. And I just keep wondering what can we do to ensure that those students can come and receive the Catawba education. So there's a lot wrapped up in that, Mindy, because that means a sustainable budget and an organization that's functioning in all the ways that it should, and that we're recruiting the right way and telling the Catawba. I mean, it's all the things I mentioned before that we're working on, but when you sum it up, it's not really about the budget. It's not really about the market. It's about those potential students. It's about those people. And that's the thing that I tend to worry about the most.
Thank you.
See a couple of things. Phil noting you work part-time for Ncicu and proud when we won our Ethics Bowl over Wake Forest 2 years ago. Yes, I did know about that. I read about that, Phil. And yeah, likewise, when I saw the undergraduate research numbers, I was, really excited about that. Larry Bullock is asking if I plan to teach a course at Catawba. I do, and I can say that, I've already, Connie and the folks in the discipline that I teach in have already asked for what I might be able to do. And I have for the past 10 years taught either philosophy of religion or something on the history of Christian thought at least once a year. This will be the second time in my career in higher ed that I'm not teaching. And I can only bear that so much because I love being in the classroom. So I will look forward to doing that sometime next year. And I should say that I typically Well, not all the time, but about half the time I do that with my wife. My wife is a theologian also. And so the last 2 years we taught philosophy of religion together. I can't believe I didn't mention, well, I said that Kimberly's from here. She's from Trinity and very involved in campus life, and also does work for a leadership firm in Chapel Hill called Kramer Leadership. She's the vice president for operations there. So she is here on campus and loves being here and is also engaged in that work. What is one thing I've learned about Catawba that has surprised me and biggest priority you have for the next normal year? So what surprised me? I've gotten this question a couple of times, and this still stands out to me. I mentioned earlier the talk of the Catawba family. I heard a lot about that during the interview process. And in fact, I think, Meg, you were in the group that first interviewed me, and I remember somebody mentioning Catawba family. It's in my notes pretty early on during that first meeting. And I kept hearing it. And when I came to campus, students told me about it. They kept using this language. And I thought, well, these are really lovely people and they clearly care about each other. But then I got to campus and thought, wow, this is rich and it's deep and it's embedded in the community in a really significant way. So I think the surprise was not that it was real, but that it is as deep as it is. Because, and I say that because I've been around a while and that language gets used a lot, but it isn't always filled with meaning. And here it seems to be really filled with meaning. So I'll call that a pleasant surprise. Biggest priority I have for a normal year. Well, I think I may have mentioned that earlier too. I think the biggest frustration I have is that I cannot be out and seeing people in the way that I would ordinarily do. And yeah, some of you have heard me say I'm done with Zoom. I'd rather be in person. I'd rather be able to go to a football game and a soccer match. And Larry Leckenby's on here. He knows this. My wife was a season ticket holder for Boston College basketball, so she could watch North Carolina teams when they came to Boston. And we rode every game out to Boston College. I think we were one of 10 people in the stadium every time, Larry, because nobody goes to Boston College basketball. You can't get a ticket to a hockey game, but you could always get a ticket to a basketball game. We love doing that kind of thing. We love getting out to arts events. We love having people over for dinner. And we can't do any of that. So that will be a priority that will really roll out once we're past the pandemic. That's probably not what someone was expecting, but that's a priority that we just can't do right now that we will get to. So Lisa is asking, how confident are we that Catawba will make it to Thanksgiving without sending students home early? And I see, yeah, some colleges are really teetering right now, Lisa. We're watching that very carefully. Our numbers right now have us solidly in green. We also understand you could get bad news today or tomorrow that changes that. So we're under no illusions here. We're not going to be overconfident. But just in the realm of probabilities, it's probable, it's even likely, I think, that we're going to get to Thanksgiving as we planned. Again, today at 4, I could get news that changes that, Lisa, but the signs are looking pretty good. And I think a real indication of that is just the numbers. I think Larry and I and Drew Davis, who's led our Return to Catawba work with Connie, our provost, we expected as we increase the number of testing, surveillance testing for athletes, which we've done to follow NCAA guidelines, we expected a certain number of positives every week, and we've not come anywhere near those numbers. Again, that's a tribute to coaches, students, faculty, everyone following the protocols. Hasn't been perfect, but people have done really well. And so just reading those signs, I think we're in pretty good shape. I hope I don't have to eat those words, Lisa, but that's where we are today. And I got another question here about any update on a mascot. I don't have an update on it, but I will tell you that a couple of years ago, there was the suggestion that the school revive having a mascot. And I asked our Dean of Students, Jared Tice, for us to pick that back up and carry on those discussions. I think it would be good for us to do that. And I think we'll probably do more work on that in the spring. And there have been several conversations, but certainly along the lines of some animal mascot that might be consistent with the history of the school. So we'll see where that goes, but we're going to restart those discussions. Any other questions?
Say, feel free. You can unmute yourself if you want, or in the chat.
We have not had any Facebook Live questions, but we've had some folks wishing you some blessings on this journey, President Nelson, and one alum commented that she misses having field hockey.
That's funny. I just talked to someone who's been around the community for a very long time. They were reminiscing about field hockey. That happened just last week, as a matter of fact. So noted that you miss field hockey.
Hey, Michael, you have a question?
Yeah, why was the Kendrick building closed?
There were a number of renovations to be done there. That building had aged and it had some problems, and that includes some water problems. So there are a couple of things. So a general redo, and the rehab of some spaces for some of the health sciences programs to fit into. But also there are water problems in that building. It's leaky. And what we discovered is there were some masonry problems from the time it was built. And so the masonry on one side of the building was taken off, flashing was put in appropriately, and it was rebricked. And then we will do a final bit of work on that to solve water problems. There's remaining on one side of that building, but we're gonna wait till people are off campus to do that over the winter break. And we hope that that will solve those problems for the future. So part of it was simply basic capital improvements, and another part of it was to fix some long-standing structural issues.
Thank you.
Envelope issues, I should say. Is there any discussion about changing the name of the college to Catawba University? There has been some discussion about that in the future. Those that have asked me about it, I, by the way, came from a college, a place named a college. It's a state institution up in Massachusetts that technically was a university. By the legislature had given it university status, but we never changed the name. And we didn't change the name because there was no advantage to doing so. On the branding side, it made sense to keep college. One of the reasons I would consider a change is if it helped recruiting students. In that case, it gave us no advantage, but it would cost a ton of money to change the name. So to me, it's a matter of the organization of the college. Are we of the kind of organization that would benefit from university status, particularly as it relates to the numbers of schools and the kinds of degrees you offer? So that's one, structural. And what about the branding and marketing? I can tell you, when I've been asked this question, neither of those drive me to consider changing to university status. And somebody helpfully said, yes, Dartmouth has done very well. I could name a number of schools that have done very well by maintaining the college name. So could I be persuaded otherwise? Sure, but just with the kind of leading indicators, I don't see a compelling case for that. But to be honest, since I've been here, there hasn't been a whole lot of discussion other than people wanting to know my opinion. And I think I just gave it to you. Yeah.
We have time for a couple more questions.
These are great questions, by the way.
We'll let anybody add any, doesn't have to be a question, a word of wisdom, a helpful tidbit for Dr. Nelson, if you wish.
And I will tell you, one thing I'll love about being in person is just to hear your stories. I know it's hard to do in such a format, but it's one reason I look forward to us being together. Well, thanks everyone for logging on. I know there are a number of other homecoming events. Make sure that you pay attention to those and log on, because we will love to see you there. I see a couple of things. Phil says keep communicating. We will keep doing that, Phil. And someone's asking about how theater and music programs are coping with the current learning environment. They have carried on, and I will say a number of students in music and theater comment that their friends at other institutions are doing nothing in performing arts, just nothing this semester. Our faculty figured out a way to engage the students, and I appreciate their creativity and the work that they've done and the way the students have engaged in this. I was so touched. Some of you may know I'm a conductor, and Dr. Burgess asked me over one day to hear the choir and asked me to come up and conduct them. So I got to conduct them through a piece of music, and what a thrill to be in front of them and to get to hear them and see them just working out a way to keep learning and keep working together under extraordinary circumstances. I've mentioned how that's happened in athletics. It's also happening in performing arts. It's a credit to our students, and it is a credit to our faculty and staff as well. Someone's asking if the street will be closed to expand the baseball stadium. Not at this point. Not at this point. Maybe, perhaps that could happen in the future, but not at this point. We don't have the zoning allowance for that, and the plans for phase 1 do not call for that.
So I have a question. So hi. So with next semester happening, is there at least plans in place in case, COVID doesn't go down, especially for the graduating class for graduation? I know I'm the class of 2020, so yeah. Mine's kind of been all over the place, and I just wanted to make sure that maybe the class of 2021, at least we have a plan in place for them in case something does happen.
Yeah, we will have contingencies for all of that. We've of course been working on plans for class of 2020, but are also thinking about 2021. And here's what we're doing as we're finishing this term. And you can imagine we've learned quite a lot about how to do this. We're asking ourselves some questions about what we can do better in the spring, and planning for commencement and end of year activities will be included in that. And I imagine we will adapt our return to campus plan accordingly. But that's a really good question, because we were, everyone was caught by surprise at the end of the spring, but right now we know better how not to be surprised about a number of these things. And I'll be honest, the way the trends are going, I'm not expecting for this to abate by the time we get to January and February. And there are some predictions it could be even harder to do. So we're assuming worst case scenario on this, Mackenzie, while hoping for the best.
Well, thank you, everyone. I will share a link for the rest of our homecoming week, and I will say the upside is normally we just have 2 days. We have a full week of events going on. So yeah, we're celebrating our 50th class reunion with the class of 1970 this evening. The choir and band is having a reunion later on, and I'll give you a little a little preview. Dr. Burgess is going to give a little organ preview. So if you want to join in the choir and band reunion, you're more than welcome. And then a lot of events going on during the week. And of course, we're ending with our traditional homecoming Distinguished Alumni Awards ceremony on Saturday, where we're honoring 7 really deserving and phenomenal individuals. And that'll be out on Facebook Live for everyone to see as well. So I will share the link to the homecoming schedule. Don't hesitate to email us at alumni@catawba.edu if you have any questions or thoughts. And just again, thank you so much for participating with us today. Thank you all.